welcome to everyone also from my side here sitting at the University of Applied Sciences of Western Switzerland in Fribourg, the School of Engineering and Architecture, where I'm responsible for a series of cross-regional innovation projects. And I'm very happy to be a part of this afternoon's program, to be in the position to moderate and try to structure a bit the different inputs from our great speakers that we will welcome in a moment to the floor. So really happy you will see that we have an exquisite set of speakers for this afternoon's program, and therefore I don't want to monopolize the time either, because this afternoon is not about my ideas for the future of innovative projects across European SMEs, but it is about the inputs from our experts. So I will just try in a few minutes to give you an overview over how we will structure this afternoon's program, why we have selected certain topics to focus on, and then directly give the floor to our experts and speakers. So the main topic, how to fund innovative projects in European SMEs, is of course a huge topic. And it is a topic that I know a bit something about also from a practical perspective. And I briefly want to tell you something that happened to me no later than this morning. At the School of Engineering and Architecture, I am responsible to actually bring in contact our research institutes with small and mid-sized enterprises, with companies to foster innovation projects for our regional competitiveness. So this is part of my daily business, to get involved in meetings, in brainstorming sessions, in project development sessions for innovative projects between academic players and industry players. And in this special case this morning, we had the fantastic opportunity to actually try to set up such a project across borders. As Maria Sole has said, I'm at the moment responsible for a specific Interreg project called RDANet, where we try to foster such cross-regional collaborations. And in the framework of this RDANet project, we had the opportunity to get in touch with actors from Bavaria, with a company from Bavaria, actually a startup from Bavaria, who approached us with a fantastic technology in the field of natural fiber composites. So we had this startup from Bavaria contacting us for an innovation project on natural fiber composites that they would like to bring to the market with some implementation partners. And they got in touch with us because they knew that we at our University of Applied Sciences have specialized research institutes in the fields of natural fiber composites and also plastics injections, and they wanted to discuss this. We could also bring to the table this morning a mature SME from Switzerland that is active in the sports goods industry. Mature SME that is very interested in actually using natural fiber composite materials to replace other inputs in their production processes in the future, somehow to get a second life as an SME, as a mature SME. So we were sitting together at this table with all these ingredients: a startup, a mature SME that could work as an implementation partner with the research and academic institutes that could make such an innovation project fly. But as you certainly all know, there at some point in these discussions always has to be the person that is the bad cop and has to mention the elephant in the room. It is never as simple as that. We were sitting there very dynamic. Everyone was feeling really the spirit of innovation and the potential that these ideas that we exchanged had, but there are a lot of challenges still, and especially if we're talking about cross-border cooperation. To make it short, the first problem, of course, no one seems to have financial resources to actually get such a project started. The startup from Bavaria told us that they were in contact with a venture capitalist who was actually interested in investing private equity in their activities for such a project, but that this venture capitalist was not too fond of collaborating with public research institutions. So the combination between private and public in this case did not seem to be as easy as possible. On the other hand, we were also looking at our regional funding mechanisms and funding programs that we have to support exactly these types of innovation projects. We had the specialist of our regional funding program for such activities present at the table, and the problem there was that in our regulations of our regional funding program, it actually is specified that the effect that the companies that create value through such a project need to be at least in majority from our own regional territory. So it's very complicated to involve a partner, for example, from Bavaria, as we wanted to do with this good idea. So basically we had a fantastic idea, very innovative stuff that would do a lot of good to our region, to the competitiveness of our region, of our companies, of our startups, to the outreach of our research institutes, and the same for the partners from Bavaria. But it's complicated to get the funding. It's complicated to get this started across regions. This is a very brand new example from this morning, so it's really something that is very close to my own experience, and I feel that if we want to work with SMEs, the potential to work across borders and the potential to combine private and public funding are really unexploited at the moment, and we have a lot of opportunity in the European frameworks to make better use of these potentials here. And this is again the list of challenges that has been presented by Maria Sole before, just to show you that exactly the problems that we faced this morning in the discussion have been mentioned also by Maria Sole in what the experience from the BE-READI ALPS project is pointing towards. Access to finance remains complicated in the perception of SMEs instead and in spite of all the programs that are available, and especially if we're talking about transnational cooperation, bringing actors from different regions, different countries even together, it is really complex. And also the topic of private and public combination of funding remains a potential that is underexploited. So these two topics are the topics that we have selected for the discussion this afternoon. Cross-regional cooperation as a potential that could be addressed in a more effective way in the future, and the combination of public and private measures to help European SMEs get involved in innovative projects across borders. Now, all of this is part of a policy dialogue. So we don't simply want to discuss these two issues from a scientific perspective or from a practical perspective to give clues to SMEs, to show SMEs what is possible. This is, of course, also an important part, but we are aiming here at the specific level, and the specific level is the policy dialogue. So a part of this BE-READI ALPS projects is actually targeted towards the development of strategic roadmaps for the alpine space competitiveness. So in the end of this process of all these discussions that we're having with our stakeholders and experts on these different topics, we would like to come up with recommendations, with concrete actions that we propose to be taken to improve the competitiveness of the alpine space with regards to mature SMEs. So we're doing this in the framework of a policy dialogue, and because we're doing this in the framework of a policy dialogue, and in the end we want to propose concrete actions, I like to structure the afternoon according to this framework here. In the end, what we would like to get out of the discussion with our experts this afternoon is an overview over what is existing, what is there for companies that might maybe not be known, where there might be knowledge gaps, communication gaps, also other obstacles for companies to actually use what is there, but to give this overview over the status quo. And I'm very happy that we have this fantastic list of experts that really represent, in a certain sense, the status quo very well. In addition to that, we want to go further. We actually want to discuss, okay, we know what we have, we know what the status quo is. Let's discuss now with the experience that all of our speakers have in working with small and mid-sized enterprises, what are the challenges that they experience? Exactly as in my experience from this morning, we all know, and we all have stories like this, it's not that easy. So what are concretely these challenges, and what are, with our expertise on the table, potential solutions, ideas for the future to make better use of the potential of working across borders with SMEs in innovation projects and in combining public and private funding in the promotion of innovation projects across European SMEs. So this is the framework that we have for this afternoon: status quo, challenges, ideas for the futures, and solutions. We will then, after the discussion this afternoon, of which I'm convinced that it will be very fruitful and very interesting, and we will learn a lot from our experts, we will then process all of that and get back to you with our insights that we gained from this discussion, and try to feed that back into this policy dialogue to really make use of this discussion for the formulation of concrete recommendations for the future competitiveness of our regions. So much for the framework. A very last short note on who we are doing this policy dialogue with, who are our policy stakeholders. Basically, it is the advisory board of the BE-READI ALPS projects, very exquisite list of project observers that we can work with to actually use the recommendations that we have to really feed into a real existing policy project. The way we're going to organize the discussion is according to the two main topics. First, we will have a panel introduced by a keynote, and then a panel discussion on the cross-border cooperation topic, and then after a short break on combining public and private funding. So we have quite some program this afternoon. I will introduce the different speakers as we go. Before I give the floor to our first keynote speaker, of course, I want to also raise your attention to the fact that in case you have questions, if you have comments on the framework of this whole afternoon, but then more specifically on the inputs that you're hearing from our experts, if you have questions or comments that you would like us to comment on, please feel free to use the chat. I will take a look at the chat regularly and try to give your questions to the speakers. And if I'm not able to see all the questions, I know that Maria Sole is always extremely efficient in helping out with this type of activity. So to all the participants, attendees, please put your questions to the speakers into the chat, and I will relate them to our speakers. All right, this being said, it is now my great pleasure and honor to introduce to you the keynote speaker for the first topic on the question of cross-regional possibilities for SMEs to engage in innovation projects across border. And our keynote speaker this afternoon is Ms. Nolwenn Simoneau. Great pleasure to have you with us. Nolwenn is International Project Manager at BPI France, La Banque Publique d'Investissement. And as an international project manager, she is actually in charge of the bilateral partnerships for innovation, and especially for the Eureka network program. So Nolwenn, I'm really looking forward to hearing your keynote speech on this urgent and interesting topic. So the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for this introduction. And I hope we will have plenty of questions to answer afterwards. And I'll try to be exhaustive, but not to be too long, because I guess that all of you know a bit about the Eureka network. Could you confirm that you see my screen and everything's okay? First,
yes, I do see it, and we can hear you. Perfect. Thank you.
Great. So what is the Eureka network? Basically, the greatest, at least the biggest network for R&D collaboration. So as you see, you have different status, but the objective is for all the countries you see here in color to enable their own companies to work with companies from the other members of this great network. So to have maybe first an overview and then to deep dive within all the core programs, main programs of Eureka. What is Eureka doing? Firstly, to foster international cooperation, of course, to enable, to give a frame to help companies working together in Europe, of course, but also within other parts of the world, and with partners in Canada or South Korea, for instance. new business opportunities, because we're talking a lot about R&D collaboration and co-development, but also, of course, the objective of these companies is to have a market afterwards. And most of the time, the idea is maybe to have a first step maybe easier in the country, because when you're going through exports, it's for our case, for instance, you have a very French product and you arrive on a new market with new rules, new culture, and it's kind of complicated. And here with the R&D collaboration and the possibility to co-develop or co-adapt your project and product and service with a local partner, you arrive on a new market, but you arrive with maybe some product or some service more adapted to it, and also the partner you had as a technological partner most of the time being a good commercial partner, because he knows how it works. And so of course new business opportunities, and you will see all the objective is really to be very near to the market while we are talking about R&D collaboration. And also, I think the three last parts are quite linked: high degree of flexibility with freedom to create consortia and strong bottom-up approach. Because most of the time, and we will be talking a lot about the Eureka project network, and the objective is to have not specifically calls with a deadline, or at least not with a specific topic or specific sector, but the idea is really for most of the program to have a bottom-up approach to enable companies from all different sectors to submit an application, to co-develop something with specific partner. You will see maybe sometimes corporates, but also other SMEs, of course, that's the main topic, or also R&D centers. And a high degree of flexibility, of course, because sometimes you have deadlines, but it's twice a year or maybe more, so you could actually decide on which code you want to apply. And also it is possible to submit all year round and to actually adapt the submission to your own timeline when you want to submit a Eureka Network project. So that are the main topics and the main frame for the Eureka cooperation. Here you have some figures about what is Eureka, because Eureka is a 40 years, almost 40 years programs launched in the 80s, and more than 7,000 projects have been funded from that since 1985, and more than 15,000 companies have been collaborating through this. So it's a good way, and you see that it evolves, and it is quite, we have again this bottom-up approach, because it adapts to what we want to foster, what we see, what the needs are within the companies. And so you see that at the very beginning it was more about maybe the corporates or the big industrials, and then more and more we're working with smaller companies. And you will see it's we have figures on Eurostars, it's quite less than 50 people. So we're adapting, and to all kind of sectors. As I said, Eurostars, for instance, has no topic, or the bilateral calls has no topic. Most of the time have no topics. But you can see some, of course, some sectors more than others. Here you have all the electronical parts, and well, it explains a lot, because of course it has been launched in the 80s, so you had all the digitalization, and so of course it has been a big way of innovation. Biological science and technologies are today very much needed, and has a peculiar interest in European fundings and European scheme. And so you will see, with of course specific needs, with maybe more time to develop, but also a large amount of cash needed to develop. So specific interest in this kind of collaboration. industrial manufacturing, material and transport, and I think it will be better and better in the year coming, because you have all the Industry 4.0 specific topic, which is very linked to the circular economy and also other topics that we will see later in the environment. So it will be a big thing. And also all you have about transport with green mobility, e-mobility, automotive vehicle, and so on. So this will also continue to be one of the biggest strategic areas, I guess. And the last two, energy, but also environment, which I hope will be a bit bigger in the following year. And I think that would be very interesting to see how it evolves. Regarding the market, because as we said, yes, it is very linked to the market. The medical is first, so we found, of course, the same market as we have as collaborative sectors. Industrial product and manufacturing, more than computer related. So we have all the digitalization part. The first topic within collaborative aspects is maybe shared between the computer and maybe industrial also, and energy and transportation. So here you have some figures to know what kind of companies could be interested in this program, but of course it's quite open, so we could see different topics in the following years. And so how is it working as the main goal? Eureka Benefits is something really close to the market. As we said, it is very interesting for the companies to find another technological input in another company with some specialty, and so they can co-develop something, of course. And it could be the only reason, but most of the time it is also to begin to understand a bit more and to adapt something to a new market, so close to market, of course. The second one is the employment. Of course, we're talking again about new markets, about new possibilities and new offers. So a turnover which should grow, so employment also. And of course, all the question of the competitiveness, because you have the new markets, the improved market shares with the new technology, and you also have, of course, the export and all the market aspects. So I won't enter into the detail, but of course, sorry, yes. And so we have some verbatim from every country, which shows that there is a very interesting interest, I would say, from companies for this kind of program. But so what are the programs? And that's the second part of the presentation. And I show you the most, like the presentation is quite exhaustive, but I will pass maybe a bit fast on some slides. First program, the clusters, which are actually peculiar since it is not from the public area, which it is not some agencies or European Commission which launched the calls, but industrial corporates. And so the objective of such a cooperation and such a scheme is really to enable companies, and when I say companies, more SMEs, to work with R&D centers, but it is possible through other programs, but above all with corporates. And the specificity is that the laureates and the projects will be funded both by the industrial corporate partner, but also by the public. So typically you have some scheme here, some figures, 2 to 14 participants, so of course it depends, and some project could be quite small, 1.4 million euros up to 15 million euros. So it could really adapt once again to the topic. So here you have the main clusters today, but of course you could have more information on every subject if it is interesting for you. I will pass maybe on the most known now, Eurostars, I guess. well, it is the most known, I think, in France, and that's very good. So it enables, you have here the Eurostars countries. It's most about the European countries and European members, but with also Canada, South Korea, or small and all those countries. And the objective is really for this R&D program to improve the R&D collaboration, of course, but with a specific scheme, because the leader, the company will be a Eurostars Smes, which means that actually some part of the turnover or some part of the full-time equivalent has to be dedicated to R&D. So it's really, the R&D is really the core thing, the main objective of this program, but while staying market-oriented and, of course, bottom-up. So it's kind of an interesting program, and it is very interesting also for companies because the success rate is at 29%. And you have, most of the time, because we're waiting for Eurostars 3, but 2 calls per year, which means that you can actually quite adapt this submission to your timeline, because you know that if you do not have the time for the first one, you will have to the second. Once again, some figures. So it's more about 3 to 4 participants, so it's smaller than the clusters, and 2 to 3 countries. So most of the time you have 3 countries. The objective is to really collaborate, and what is really interesting is that all the R&D laboratories and universities could be funded as well. And that's very interesting, and above all when we talk about some medical, medtech, biotech, and so. So that's a very interesting programs. Here you have some figures about the how it is working. So as I said, university, research institute, most of the time are the main partner. And here, as I said earlier, you have some idea about also the profile of the companies who actually submit proposals. And you see that you have, most of the time, 83% of SMEs that are actually less than 50 employees. So we see that it is really an interesting program to some small and some maybe early stage companies, but who can actually, of course, fund the other part which is not granted, and also to go abroad and collaborate. Third program, Global Stars. So the Global Stars program is basically some Eureka network projects that we will develop later. The objective is actually to enable companies from members, Eureka members country, to co-develop something through a call with a company not in Eureka. For instance, this year we have a Global Stars with Taiwan. Taiwan is not a company within Eureka, but our company from France, from Netherlands, and from other countries, I'm sorry, I do not have the list in my head, can actually submit some applications, for this call. Most of the time, and actually, I think it's always, the Global Stars are sectorial, which means that we actually launch some specific topic. This year for Taiwan, for instance, it is about circular economy and microprocessor, I guess. So you could have several different topics, but it is with a topic. So here you have the main eligibility criteria, I would say, and of course it is at least one company from one country, so in Taiwan, and the other in a member state here in Europe. And finally, the network projects, which are, I guess, what echoes the most to this bottom-up approach, to the flexibility and to the possibility to create your own consortia, as we saw at the very beginning, because this network project is actually the possibility for all companies, companies within 2 countries, at least, of course, 2 countries from the Eureka network, to collaborate whenever they want. And so actually, the objective is for these participants to find a partner in the other country, and without any call, without any deadline or topic, to just come and submit one application on the Eureka platform and to ask for fundings. In France, BPI France, but also in another country with the national agency. And so they could ask a co-funding whenever they want and to adapt so this kind of fundings to their own timeline. And I just wanted to add something on the bilateral calls that we have at BPI, because actually we founded the other part of our bilateral calls on the same scheme, because it is exactly what we wanted. So of course we could have calls with deadlines, but we have, most of the time it happened once actually, and most of the time no topic, not specific topic. And also we could use the same scheme with same kind of eligible costs, same kind of eligible partners, and also the same fundings criteria as we got in the Eureka Network projects. And these bilateral calls are here and developed at BPI France to first, if we need actually to develop a partnership with some other country which is not within the Eureka network. For instance, until now, Singapore. And so we have this bilateral code, so actually quite the same thing as the Eureka Network project, but without the platform. But the same thing with Enterprise Singapore, which is the equivalent of BPI France in Singapore. So that's the first thing. We could actually have a bilateral calls, which means that we work with a country with several programs, and they prefer to work through bilateral calls. For instance, in Germany, we have the DLR, which is actually the agency in charge of this Eureka network, but we also have another bilateral calls with the IAF, which is the operator for the TEAM program in Germany, which is the program of innovation funding Mittelstand. So we have these two possibilities, and actually the Eureka network is really great. So we wanted to replicate it with our other country. And Michael, tell me if I have a bit more time, or if it's over.
I would say 1 or 2 minutes.
No, it won't be that long, and it's more about opening the conversation actually, because
that's very nice.
So it was just because we discussed about the possibility of fundings, but as we discussed earlier, we have a lot of questions for companies. It's not that easy to go to this kind of partners and to this kind of partnership, but as well programs. And so we developed some tool in BPI France, which is here to help companies finding some partners to help them drafting or writing the R&D proposal for submission, but also to make market studies and etc. It's actually all kind of help they could need just before the funding in itself. And so it is part of our strategy to help them go abroad and find new partners to go through these collaborative programs. So I won't say a word after that. I'll let you continue. And if you have any question, please feel free to leave with great pleasure.
Thank you so much, Nolwenn. That was really nice, really comprehensive. I do have a lot of questions, but I propose that I will address these questions to you maybe when we're going to discuss the challenges, because they're all a bit oriented towards the challenges that SMEs still have to participate in these projects. And I see that we don't have any questions from the audience at this stage, so I repeat my call for questions and comments of the attendees. If you have questions for Ms. Simoneau, please add them in the chat, and I will give the questions later on to Nolwenn. So thank you very much. At this point, we will have you back on the panel, also available for questions if they arise. Very, very comprehensive presentation. Thank you so much for this. And I know that we also have a colleague of Nolwenn Simoneau with us. She is joined on the panel discussion that we will now have by her colleague Christian Dubarry, who is actually the head of European Affairs at BPI France. So let me present to you Mr. Christian Dubarry as our first panelist joining now the discussion with our experts. Thank you very much for being with us, Christian, and I can see that we can also see you on the screen. I will present to you also the second panelist that we have this afternoon joining this discussion. It is Ms. Natalia Garcia Mozo from the Bavarian Research Alliance BE-4. Great pleasure to have Natalia with us. She is the head of the SMEs advisory services at the Bavarian Research Alliances and also specialized in the European Innovation Council program in the framework of Horizon Europe. So she has a lot to share on that as well. Then we do have Mr. Stephen Frigerio. Thank you very much for being with us. Also, Mr. Frigerio, if you can switch on your cam, there you are. Great to have you with us. Stephen Frigerio is from APRE, the Agenzia per la Promozione della Ricerca Europea, so the Agency for the Promotion of European Research of Italy, and is responsible there to serve as the national contact point for Italy for the European Innovation Council program. So I think you have a lot of shared background also with Natalia. Thank you for being with us, Stephen Frigerio. And finally, we do also have Mr. Michael Walch. Michael Walch is managing international research programs at the Austrian Research Promotion Agency, FFG, and is the national contact point for Eureka and coordinating the life cycle of international R&D projects in this role. So we have a fantastic panel together, and I would like to start, but very briefly, because unfortunately we don't have that much time, by giving you the opportunity, to those of you who have not presented the activities of your institutions, to very briefly present what you with your institution offer to SMEs that want to engage in transnational and cross-border innovation project, in addition to what has already been presented by Ms. Simoneau and the Eureka network. So I really ask you to be as short as possible on this, 1-2 minutes to say what your institution offers as status quo to SMEs in this field. And I would like to start with Natalia. Natalia, please, what is the perspective of the Bavarian Research Alliance on this? What can you add to the discussion?
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, first of all, for the invitation and to give me the opportunity to be here today, because this is a very important discussion about scaling up and about funding and financing. So what we do, what the Bavarian Research Alliance is offering right now is, well, in the framework of the European funding programs for research and innovation, we are like a European funding center in our region in Bavaria. You have to take into account that we have more than 10 million people in this region. So with very important and large research centers and universities. So the mission of the BE-4 is to support all of scientists and research organization in order to participate actively in the European research area. Of course, Horizon Europe is the main program, but not only. And in this activity, we are also partner in the Enterprise Europe Network. And this is why we are supporting so intensely the small and medium enterprises. In this sense, we are offering their long-term client-centric approach. So they are benefiting from the very first information services about the potential European funding for them until the moment they submit the proposal, with all kind of assessment and in partnering services and all what they need in order to submit or prepare and submit a very competitive proposal. So this is mainly our support, and of course we are dealing with these problems of the barriers in order to go international and at the same time to stay competitive with very innovative products. But we are going to discuss about that later on.
Thank you very much, Natalia, for this very concise presentation of what you do at Bavarian Research Alliance. Looking forward to discussing the challenges in the second round with you. I would like to pass now the question to Mr. Frigerio. What is your institution bringing to the table as status quo for SMEs that want to work cross-border in cross-border innovation projects?
Good afternoon, everybody. Very nice to see you all, and with very interesting presentations as well. As you rightly mentioned, I'm representing the Agency for the Promotion of Research in Europe here in Italy. Basically, it's an agency where we are obviously the national delegates for Horizon Europe, as well as the European Innovation Council, and as many of us are as well within this panel today, we also participate a lot within the Enterprise Europe network. Primarily our focus is to obviously to assist companies within the main framework of Horizon Europe, which obviously sees the participation of many SMEs and startups within the program. So basically, of course, we assist them in guiding them within the whole the whole maze of, let's say, programs available and calls available to them. We also coordinate, we're also the national contact point for the European Innovation Council, as well as the European Innovation Council network called Access to EIC, where basically we provide support and tools for SMEs that are interested in submitting proposals within the European Innovation Council. We actually also help them on other issues with regards to business planning and coaching and mentoring, access to financial instruments. So we try and also provide through this project and through this network tools and services to help, obviously, to basically get access to financing from the European Commission, specifically through the EIC Council. This is obviously a project that's a transnational project, so we also cooperate as well with many of our partners, including BPI France here, that's with us today on this project. So we work quite hand in hand with other organizations here. So yeah, that's it from my end.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for this overview. I am notified that there is a problem with the audio connection. I don't know if maybe Maria Sole, can you let me know if participants can hear what we say?
Yes, we can hear, and yeah, your image is fixed, but you can hear your voice. Okay, that's good. I switched off the camera. I'm really sorry for that. There seems to be some interference here in our Fribourg offices, but as long as you can hear me, this is already a start. So thank you very much, Mr. Frigerio. I would like to give the same introductory question now also to Mr. Walch for the Austrian perspective. What do you do for SMEs that want to work transnationally cross-border innovation projects?
So thank you. Good afternoon. So I think there are two ways to look at it. And we support both, with the FFG supports both. The first way is a sort of a top-down centralized way to support innovation corresponding to Horizon and to some extent to Eurostars, which is based at least to some extent on funding provided by the European Union. And then the second way to look at it is a more bottom-up way, where the funding and the topics are created nationally, and we at the FFG, we support national projects, national calls, and these can also be internationalized. So for example, using the Eureka network, this is a bottom-up and the funding is only provided nationally, but we still want to create some internationalization. So and at some point, these two directions meet. For example, Eurostars projects, they have to some extent funding is from the European Union, and to some extent the funding is from the national funding organizations and from the national countries. And also, of course, with the funding comes the topic and the administrative load. And we share this load and we support these two directions on how to support innovation. Of course, in parallel, then we also do work with the Enterprise Europe Network. So they are mostly trying to connect different companies and organizations. And also for the Global Incubator Network, they do sort of the same thing, but on a startup scale. Yes. And in this discussion, I think it's always very easy to argue that we want to provide services for these top-down European centralized funding schemes like Horizon, where it's very easy to argue that the Austrian companies in this case should apply and should collect the money from the European Union. But on the other hand, of course, a lot of innovation is created by small projects, by these individual companies, two small companies working together without a lot of effort. And here we place the emphasis on the Eureka network. So we support these two directions, this more centralized way of thinking about innovation and the more decentralized bottom-up way of thinking. And we provide different services, we provide funding, we provide proposal checks, all this sort of things.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walch, for the Austrian perspective of that. I have now tried to put all of that a little bit together. And what I actually get is a picture that looks very positive and that looks very good. We have this Eureka program that you are all involved with. We know that SMEs can also participate in the other programs of the European Research Framework, for example, in Horizon Europe projects. And we know, in addition, that all of your institutions are helping SMEs to actually get information about these opportunities, help them get involved in consortia that want to apply for such projects. You, Nolwenn, Simonon, have presented in detail the different programs within Eureka for which small and mid-sized enterprises can be participants. In certain cases, if I got it right, they can even be participants that get direct funding if they're involved in direct research activities. You have mentioned medtech firms, for example, that want to do research and can get, as small and mid-sized enterprises, direct funding in these programs. So the picture looks good. It can be a bit complex, but you're all there to actually help companies to get the information and to start projects like that. Why do we keep hearing from SMEs that it is complicated and that it is not working and that it is difficult to work with partners across borders? What are the remaining challenges and what are your ideas to make that better? That if we meet in 5 years again, SMEs that we have been in touch with, as myself this morning, they don't tell us it's complicated, but they tell us, okay, I know where I have to go and it's actually simple and we get what we need. And I would like to give this question now first to Mr. Dubarry, with your experience at BPI France. What is missing and what are your ideas for the future?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. Also good to see some close partners we have, like APRE. We work with them on the Horizon Europe, FFG. We work with them in Eureka, and finally we also work a lot with the regional authority, Région Sud and the Rising Sud. So happy to be with you. I think regarding the barriers to transnational collaboration for SMEs, most of you know them. It has already been said. There are several that are well identified. First, the companies, the SMEs, have to identify the benefits of the collaboration, how the collaboration is capable of accelerating the implementation of the company strategy. Is it through by being supplier of technology? Is it by using technology provided by a partner? Is it for getting a better market access, for getting a better export access, for sharing R&D investment. All of this has to be matching the strategy of the company. And then if there is a clear objective and clear path to collaborate, then the company has to set up a collaboration and find partners through their own networks or through other support networks by, for instance, getting support from private consultants, or by getting support from public networks like the ones we are representing today. This is not simple, and then when they have this consortium or this potential consortium, they have to organize the collaboration. That is to say, they have to draft appropriate collaboration agreements, to finance the R&D investment, and so on. So it's not easy, especially for SMEs, of course, as you know, for startups and even for mature SMEs. So my second point would be that the critical part here is that the availability of support services capable to help the company to overcome those barriers. That's my main point here. The funding, I will talk only for France. The funding for close to market collaborative R&D, transnational project, there is no, in fact, any existing limitation, in fact, because we have not. Nolwenn would be surprised by that, but that's true. In fact, we have a program managed at regional level, funding through grants and repayable advance any project from a mid-cap and SME, and the budget is not reserved for national or individual project. It can be addressed to the most promising projects. So if the most promising projects are transnational, we in theory, we can allocate all our budget to transnational projects. The point is that there are not enough transnational projects led by SMEs or mid-caps. And there, the need is clearly for me to have more incentives, information, support across the path I described previously for SME by identifying what is the benefit for them to engage in technology collaboration, and how to find partners, and how to find the funds, and how to sign the relevant, the appropriate contracts, and so on. So I really think that the major progress can be done by doing more together to support SMEs and onboard them in collaboration. Yeah, that's would be my main message, and the fact that we meet today and we know ourselves, I think it's a good ingredient for being capable to do that.
It certainly is. Thank you very much for all these elements. It seems France is the place of limitless opportunities for SME cooperation. That's very good to know. Also for your neighbors from Switzerland, so we can learn from our big neighbor in France. But you put it very well on the table, actually. It is complicated, and what is needed are better support services for these SMEs. And in a certain sense, as you say, there is maybe not even enough demand from the side of the SMEs who have identified what they could actually do with counterparts from other regions. So it goes a bit into the direction of actually giving these SMEs opportunities to meet and match and find out what they could do together in these existing programs. This is what I noted down, and I find that very interesting. And I would like to give the question over to Natalia for the Bavarian perspective. Do you see that similarly, or do you have additional challenges and ideas for the future?
Yes, thank you. I for sure share this idea. Maybe I wouldn't say it is a lack of demand, but maybe they don't know us, or they don't trust the public services supporting SMEs. And that is something that I discovered at the beginning of my career, and it is still there, because somehow the majority of the companies would like, and they work with private consultants instead to work with public authorities or with public companies who are offering almost the same support services. Not always, but I would say it's a question also of trust. But coming back to the problems or the obstacles in order to take advantage of the innovation funds, I would say that I would make some groups of problems depending of who is the partner who is facing them. I think there are two main common problems of this or barriers. And the first one for me is that companies and public authorities or funding authorities has different languages. They are speaking different languages, and it is okay because they are two different worlds, but they have to understand the other one in order to take advantage of what the other are offering. I mean, the public authorities, the public programs are funding projects, and the companies would like to receive a long-term fund in order to implement a strategy. It can be an international strategy or it can be a growth strategy, but at the end of the day, a project is very limited and a strategy is a long-term. So it's not compatible to finance or to finance the growth strategy of a company just with a project of 2 years. That will be, for me, the first one. The second one will be that they have different timings. I mean, the public funding is slow because it is so, because there are different internal processes, and the companies are very eager to grow, and they are very dynamic. More of the scaling up companies and the startups, they don't have time to wait. So they are thinking in different ways. In the European projects, for example, they are looking for the impact of the projects, but the companies would like to have as soon as possible the results and to commercialize. So there are different languages and there are different timings, and I think that it's one of the main barriers. There are some good examples. For example, we have some small funding programs with lump sum, like 50K in order to implement some small things, but still they are we are not at the same level, both areas. There are some barriers that are facing the companies, or at least I can identify in the companies, and even if we can't believe it, I think that not all the young entrepreneurs are open to internationalize. We are for sure, we think, and we are pretty sure that this is the best way to be successful on the market, but the young entrepreneurs and even the teams, at least in our region, are so focused on the development of the product that they are not thinking about the internationalization or the transnational cooperation. Therefore, they need really these supporting services, coaching, mentoring, or what, I mean, we can name it as we want, but they need this professional orientation. It is not everything about the product. It is there are a lot of more factors that are influencing in the successful of your company. They don't trust in the public organizations, we have mentioned that, and of course they don't have time. They don't have time to adapt their strategy in projects. This is too much. This is some additional work they don't have to do because they have to go to the market. They don't have to be proposal writers. And the last one, and I'm finished with that, I think there are some problems from the public authority sides. And I think that bilateral programs in the border regions, if we want to focus on the transnational cooperation, they are not so bilateral. They have two different public authorities or funding authorities funding different companies. So both companies are not able to cooperate because they have to respond to different public authorities with different bureaucracy and different maybe also reporting schemes and so on. So it will be great if we can give more incentives to the companies that are willing to cooperate with international companies, even if they are in the other side of the border, instead to make the funding scheme so complicated. So I will have some ideas, but I think it was enough with the description of the barriers, and I come back again to this.
The list is getting longer and longer, which is good because this will give us the opportunity to work on a lot of recommendations. Thank you so much, Natalia. What I found very interesting is that you have mentioned something that I also have experienced. SMEs do not need projects. SMEs want to work on transformation strategies, and projects do not necessarily fit in this project. And also the point that you mentioned on timing, programs are slower and are not necessarily adapted to the timing of SMEs transformation processes. So maybe by giving the question now on to Stephen Frigerio about the challenges, do you agree with that, or do you think that there are actually programs out there that could help SMEs not only with projects, but with transforming their strategies and could help them in a more flexible and rapid and adaptive way than what we seem to be experiencing? So do you agree with that, or do you think that these challenges are already covered?
Well, I think there's definitely more to be done. I think there have been quite a number of points touched upon by both Christian and Natalia, which I think are very much the kind of challenges that are being faced by a lot of SMEs also in Italy as well. I think the first point which I would want to stress out, of course, just going back through the challenges, and I think it's very important, is that, you know, especially when we're talking about smaller SMEs and startups, yes, they are more agile, but at the same time, they don't really have a clear strategy as to how to internationalize, and especially the smaller kind of SMEs, they don't really have a clear picture, and they don't have the resources, enough resources to actually understand even like the basics of the market, of how it means not to internationalize from like from a European perspective, but even from a global perspective, what that means to internationalize. So, you know, a lot of smaller SMEs, I wouldn't even want to call them SMEs, startups, I mean, people coming out from incubators, projects coming out from incubators, they don't necessarily have, you know, the understanding and the resources to develop an internationalization plan. So that definitely is something that, you know, a lot of, you know, especially technology focused projects that obviously they're focusing on the technology, we need to kind of change their perspective and train, you know, potential entrepreneurs, potential amazing projects to understand the value of internationalizing. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is, of course, you know, stressing the importance of internationalization, which many of the SMEs are, you know, are still very much, you know, they think at a more regional or a national, maybe at the very best, you know, basis of doing business with other partners or even doing research with other partners, and they still haven't really, you know, grasped the concept of, you know, reaching out to beyond their borders. And I think one additional challenge that I want to put out there is that finding a partner is not something that happens immediately or over a short period of time. It's a matchmaking process as it is. It's a matchmaking process, and it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of support, even for the beneficiary. You know, we do organize a lot of brokerage events, but then taking a step back, you know, what exactly does that, you know, taking into consideration that he has valued, or he or she has valued, the importance of internationalizing through an international project. you still need to go through the challenge of identifying the right partner or exactly that matches. And then, finding the right partner is not as easy as even going to a brokerage event. It's trying to understand, it takes a lot of time, but at the same time, it also takes a lot of understanding as to what exactly you need. So there are, the Enterprise Europe Network, there are a lot of brokerage events being organized. I mean, in that sense, there are a lot of platforms, events where people can meet. But I think with regards to very low resource, especially the most innovative startups that are coming out from incubators, universities that don't really have those competences, maybe we need to do something more there to reimagine their perception of what it means to cooperate, what is reinforce the importance of cooperation and how that brings value. And then that brings a sort of a domino effect into eventually, bringing them then to a better preparation towards any kind of brokerage event that then gets, planned for them, or any kind of, because I mean, even from our perspective, I mean, a lot of brokerage events, there is also this sense of, there are a lot of opportunities out there for B2B and matchmaking, but sometimes we don't see the
Is it just me, or I guess taking a look at the other faces, we just lost Stephen, but I think he mentioned something extremely important: resources. There is a lot of opportunities there, but companies simply don't have resources. Mr. Frigerio lost his connection resources, unfortunately, and could not finish his intervention. So I'm hoping that you will be back with us in a moment. But while we're waiting for you, Mr. Walch, so many challenges already mentioned. Are you creative enough to come up with something additional, or do you directly want to use the opportunity to bring the one perfect good idea for the future to close this first panel here? We don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, left. So I would like to give you now the opportunity to mention your challenges, and then would like to come back with a final question to Ms. Simoneau, and then unfortunately we will already have to wrap up, but the process will go on. We have a lot of interesting elements together. Mr. Walch, please, what is your perspective?
So I will be brief. I will build a little bit of a bridge, because I like what previously has been said, what Stephen said about the challenges, about the one challenge that is finding the right partner on the right topic for the right program in the right time frame. There might also be bad actors in the scene and good actors, so you really have this challenge to find the right partner for a project. So this is the first challenge. And then the second challenge is, I think at some point you have to sit down and you have to write the project, the proposal, and you have to bring it on paper, and you have to formulate it in a way that is understandable by the reviewers and at the same time is still innovative. So this is something that requires support from the funding agencies, maybe support that could be intensified, I think, working more close to the partners, to the projects, not only setting up calls, setting up webinars, but actually going into the depth of these projects. But this, of course, would require a lot of resources, but as has been mentioned, it requires a lot of understanding in the companies themselves to write an application, for example, for Horizon, which is probably the more complicated one, but even for a Eureka application, which can be done with 2 applicants, so still requires some knowledge. Now for the grand visions, I don't know, for the grand visions for the future, it's always a question for the time frame. So what I would hope for the future is that we somehow will be able to speed up the process of setting up a call and starting a project. It sometimes takes ages, and if we think about biotechnology or computer technology or electronic systems, if somebody loses 2 years from coming up with the idea until starting a project, or even 1 year, then this might be too long. And another thing is, I would like but this is a grand vision for a faraway future, is to have a sort of citizen engagement in this process. Right now, it's compartmentalized in politics, in the funding agencies. So I think if we can get some citizens involved, that would be somehow would be nice. Yeah, that's from me.
Thank you for the vision that I certainly share from my perspective here. I would be all in to do something in this direction, but it's of course, as everything, complicated. A lot of challenges on the table, a lot of also ideas for the future on the table. I would like to close by giving the opportunity to our keynote institution to actually close first to Nolwenn, and then also one question to really close it up to Mr. Dubarry. Nolwenn, Simonon, we have heard that companies don't have the resources to actually work across borders. Now, you that are the expert in actually having the overview of what is existing, what can companies apply for within the Euro program, Global Stars, Eurostars. Is there any opportunity for companies to where actually hiring someone, staff cost for someone that is working for this type of setting up of transnational cooperation, an eligible cost for an SMEs? Is this something that can be covered somewhere directly, covering actually resources that are needed to bridge the gaps and the barriers that we have seen? Is this something that is possible? That would be my question to you on the existing. And then we have one question from the public that I think will be the perfect question to close up with for Mr. Dubarry, and I ask it already so you can prepare yourself. Someone asks, we have heard what is existing. Does someone have insights into what is under construction for the future? And you, as head of European affairs at BPI France, might have insights into what is under construction. So first, Ms. Simonon, resources, is there something? And then to close, Mr. Dubarry.
Yes, I think the biggest, and that would have been my biggest thing regarding the problem and what we could do. Firstly, without speaking about a concrete program, is about demystification, because actually I think we have so many possibilities and we have wonderful programs, but for most of our companies, it's European, so it might be complex, it might be complicated to create something, etc. And so basically they do not even try to do something, but they could actually. So firstly, I think we will need to try to work on this part of demystification and to help them understand that and to help them actually better engage their resources. So yes, of course, regarding what we had, I had the last slides. For that, we actually help companies create the partnerships through events, through different programs. We also have an accelerator, a French and Italian accelerator. And so we try to build things for them, to help them, to give them the opportunity to go through a delegation in other countries and to work with them on a topic so that they could, well, if they were alone, they would need like a year to have all the contacts, the network, how it works, the ecosystem, and so we're trying really on our side to propose something shorter, and so we do the work, and so we propose them to collaborate with them with us, sorry, to better improve and go faster through this comprehension of what could be the other country and the other possibilities. And after that, of course, we have the DIAG Partenariat Tech International, which is the last slide I had, which is exactly that. Like, we could do some things on our own as a public agencies, but if you want some special ed and some very specific support for you regarding your case, regarding what you could need to help you build your consortium, about law, about also market studies, and so we could also help you through some kind of helps, also to small support to help you find the perfect expert. We could give you some names, try to help you through that, and then afterwards help you paying half of the price. So we're trying also not to fund also, but to develop a whole new possibilities and offers before that to help them really find a partner, build the partnerships, and so. So yes, that's I guess some kind of answers to all the problem regarding when, where, how. They're asking about the relationship they could build and programs they could submit application.
Thank you, and it certainly already answers part of the question to Mr. Dubarry for what is up for the future. So the final word is yours.
Thank you. So I won't learn, maybe I won't, probably most of you know the things that are ahead. There are many. The good point is that there would be many opportunities for companies to collaborate and to get public and private funds. You know, Horizon Europe with the European Innovation Council and all the collaborative program in some priority areas. On the side of Eureka, we are preparing a phase 3 of Eurostars, which will be reinforced. So it's also an important element. Apart from that, there is a InvestEU program providing financial instruments and in the form of equity and venture capital, plus high-risk loans. You have also all the regional policy and the structural funds operated by the regional authorities, with most of the time important elements in the innovation segment. Above this, there are new animals like the integrated projects of common European interest. There are some being set up now in the cloud sector between France, Italy, Germany, notably, in the hydrogen as well, in the microelectronics. So the good point is that the range of opportunities is quite interesting. The bad point is that it's even more complex than before. Furthermore, because all of those systems and programs are, most of them, intricated. There are overlapping, there are joint elements between them, so it's a really complex stuff, and that is a bit opposed to the need expressed by Natalia of simplicity for SMEs and so on, and that's a very important point that we have to keep in mind. I think we have to translate this complexity into something simple, adapted to the needs, to the calendar of companies, and most of all be SME friendly in what we propose and we do. Yeah, that's would be my conclusion. So partly very positive and some challenges for us in the same time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all the experts. This was unfortunately short, but it was intense, and I think it was a lot of food for thought. We have a question in the chat that I would not like to ask as a question, but I would like to give it to all of you as a recommendation for the future, also if working on new programs. Someone was asking, was telling me in the chat that identifying partners and so on and so forth and expertise is complicated, and there are so many possibilities for SMEs and so many business support organizations that claim to help them that it's impossible for them to actually find the right ones and have the overview. So the recommendation that comes out of this question is how can you, or what can you do to actually make it simpler, giving a better overview to SMEs? Where can they go? What can we help with? And what can you concretely get out of that? I think if we're together in a joint effort, can actually move towards such a simpler, a better overview with very concrete elements of how we can help SMEs with our programs, that would be a huge step forward for the future. And with this, I would like to close, unfortunately, this first panel already. Thank you very much, Ms. Garcia Mozo. Thank you very much, Ms. Simono, for your keynote. Mr. Dubarry for joining us on the panel, also from BPA France. Mr. Frigerio, who is back with us after being frozen. Thank you very much for APRE's participation on the panel. And finally, thank you very much to Mr. Walch for the Austrian perspective. We will be back in 10 minutes. I would like to start again at 10 to 4 with the second panel on private-public coordination. And until then, please enjoy a nice coffee or a glass of water and be back for more food for thought after the break.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.